All right, everybody, welcome back to Keeping It Real with Tyler Smith. I got Chase Younts with me today, host of Cut to the Chase Sports Podcast. We did a great video last night on his channel talking about the brackets, breaking it down, doing that thing. And now we're going to do a little bit on my channel, maybe a little bit more in-depth. Last night was a lot of instant reaction stuff, man. But how you doing, Chase?
Man, doing pretty good, man. Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be on it.
Absolutely, man. It's always good talking to you. It's been a minute. It's been a little bit too long, I'd have to say. We always try and do our best talking and doing this thing and hit some bumps in the roads, I'd say, but now we're back to it.
Most definitely, man. I mean, this is, obviously try to stay consistent with it. It's the best time of year when it comes to sports and all the stuff going around in the sports world. So can't wait to talk into it.
Absolutely, March Madness, NFL free agency, and more. We just spent the last 2 hours talking NFL free agency. Now we're going to get over to March Madness here. So, Chase, just instant reaction. What's 3 or 4 teams you think have the best shot at winning it this year? Or who would you like to see winning it this year?
Well, who I would like to see winning it this year, obviously, my Buckeyes aren't in it. I would like to see a Big Ten team like Indiana get pretty far. I love seeing Trace Jackson Davis play. I love his play style. He's a freaky athlete, 6'10", power forward. Power forward that shows his type of play. He's a power guy. He could do a little bit of finesse here and there, but I mean, he's such a great athlete to watch play. I think Alabama's got a great window to get to the Final Four. I think they got the easiest path out of any of the 1 seeds. Houston's very interesting. Obviously, they're, one of their best players. I think Marcus Sasser's hurt right now. He didn't play in yesterday's, American Athletic Championship game. See if they can get him back. They got an interesting road, coming up for them. Just a lot of the 1 seeds though, like Kansas. They're getting Bill Self back off of, being sick and. Going to be interesting seeing their entire run through the tournament. And then Purdue, I think Purdue's got the toughest road. I think they rely a bit too much on Zach Edey, and I think they see a team that is able to, match them with, maybe not necessarily a 7'5" guy, but if they have a bunch of, depth at the bigs, I think a team like that will be able to bounce them out early. So I think that's kind of what the instant reaction is, and that's kind of what I kind of highlight looking at the 1 seed and their paths to the Final Four.
Absolutely. I think I echo a lot of the same sentiments there. And I couldn't agree more with the Zach Edey take. Zach Edey is Purdue's main man all the time. They rely heavily on, rightfully so. He's been dominant all year. And I think in March, you just got to have a team that doesn't have to stop Zach Edey, but at least slow him down. I think that's the biggest thing. Just have a guy who can slow him down and just prevent him from dropping 30 a game going into March. And, we take a look at the bracket here. Starting with the South, Alabama is a team I think that really can do it. Controversy has been there throughout the year for Alabama, unfortunately, off the court, but they've really done their thing all along. And I think they have one of the easier paths, if not the easiest. I think wouldn't it be wrong to say they have the easiest path getting to the potential Final Four? What do you think about that?
I mean, yep, number 1 overall seed. They've been, arguably the best team in basketball this entire season. Brandon Miller's an absolute matchup nightmare, being 6'9", shows a lot of, Kevin Durant-esque in his game, especially being a freshman. I mean, it's incredible what he's doing there. They got a lot of junior, senior guards. Javon Quinterly coming off the bench for them. I think it was Seth Greenberg kind of mentioned this. Bama has 2 of everything. If one person goes down or one person's kind of, not really doing, playing up to par, the other person kind of step in there and just take over. I mean, their depth is fantastic. I think when you look at their road, I think they're almost, I'm not gonna say automatically, but they have a pretty easy road to at least the Elite 8. And then Arizona's shaky. Baylor, we don't know, because Baylor lost their last 2 games to Iowa State, but we don't know. There's a lot of uncertainty down in the bottom half of the South region. And I think, I kind of mentioned yesterday with Creighton. I mean, Creighton has a very good shot at making to the Elite 8. So I think Bama has a pretty solid path to get to at least the Elite 8, if not the Final Four.
I couldn't agree more. I think Alabama smooth sailing to the Elite 8. On their way to the Elite 8, I think West Virginia might be a good test for them with the Press Virginia days. But what worries me about Alabama, if I had to give one thing that's like the negative or the downside, is their 3-ball or bust in a sense. They shoot some of the most threes going into March. They were clipped top 3 in the nation is shooting threes in the game. And obviously they do a great job shooting with Brandon Miller. He's electric scoring. if those three balls are hitting, they're going to be a tough team to beat. But they aren't hitting. They might be shooting themselves in the foot. But they've been hitting all year long. So I think Alabama is a smooth sailing road to the Elite Eight, maybe in the Final Four. Is there a certain matchup here that you like?
Man, I'm taking a look at this thing. If you're looking at first round matchups, I was looking at the 5-12 line actually. Charleston 31-3. Mentioned with them that they have, they have all 5 of their starters. No one averages more than 13 points a game, and no one averages less than 10 points a game. They're all pretty consistent. They play to the system very well. They play very sound basketball. So I think if they're able to really take over the game against San Diego State and just kind of, play the game to their pace, I think Charleston has a very good shot at going there. I mean, 31-3 this season. I don't care what conference they're even in. I mean, that's still incredible for, being a small conference team like that. And they were in the top 25 for a good portion of the season. I think they're as high as 18 at one point. So, I mean, you got to give them props when it comes to that. So I think Charleston versus South Dakota. I mean, San Diego State is a good look right there.
So I think Charleston is a team that's dangerous. I think they very are dangerous. And what stands out to me is not only that 31-3 record, but 80 points per game.
Yeah.
And 67 points allowed. So, I mean, on average, they're beating teams by 13 points within their conference, small conference or not. And as you mentioned, only losing 3 games and winning 31 plus is outstanding. It's outstanding. It's tough to do that being a 30-win team regardless, let alone who you're playing.
Most definitely. And I think you look at I think also another matchup you look at is West Virginia and Maryland. Maryland in the Big Ten tournament, they won one game and they lost to Indiana 21-12. They don't really score a whole lot. It's actually they don't really give up a whole lot, is what I'll say. I mean, West Virginia gets out there and run. I think the record matchup kind of what gets me. Obviously, in March, you kind of throw the records out and all. But, I mean, Maryland 21-12 and West Virginia being at 19-14. I think, the Big 12 is a very highly respected conference in college basketball, especially this year. They, West Virginia was like 8th in their conference. They were like the 8th seed, and they're a number 9 seed in this, in March Madness. So, these teams beat up on each other a whole lot. They're battle tested. They're, press Virginia. They're going to get out and run. They're going to, use their defense to, make it as their offense and all that. So I think that's going to be a really interesting matchup coming Thursday in Birmingham.
Absolutely. I think that game stands out to me. And that you call it the upset, technically just looking at the line, 9-8 technically is an upset, but I don't think it's too much of an upset. And what worries me about Maryland, yes, you come out of the Big Ten, but they were horrible away from home this year. Yeah. They were one of the worst teams on the road in this game. Yeah, neutral site, but you're not playing at home. And that's what worries me with this Maryland team. And I think defense might prevail in this one and give it to West Virginia with that press they always run.
I could definitely see that. I think with West Virginia, I mean, the press can get them at least through a game or two, but I think when they go on ahead and see a team like Alabama, if Alabama's on their A game and they're not turning the ball over, I think that's where kind of, press Virginia is their run's gonna end when it comes to that. I think when they meet their match and a team's able to handle the press consistently, hit threes and all that, I think that's when West Virginia kind of falters, and Alabama's a team to do that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think West Virginia does enough to give Maryland a hard time and get out of that one. And I think the West Virginia-Alabama game, they will give Alabama some problems, I think, early. But once Alabama settles in, I think they greatly pull away in that one. And then I know you talked about and brought up a minute ago, Creighton for me. That's a team I like having going far in this one. Is there someone that you think might upset somebody and go far out of the South rather than Creighton, or who you think is like a surprise team here?
Well, out of the South, I mean, I think I really think it's Charleston that gets to the Sweet 16. I don't really believe in Virginia a whole lot. I don't know if Virginia or Furman's going to win. That's kind of a toss-up before 13 matchup. I think, Charleston beats San Diego State. Whoever Charleston has to end up playing in the second round, I think Charleston's going to beat them. So I could see them as a 12 going to the Sweet 16 against Alabama. And that, kind of plays in Alabama's smooth sailing road to the Elite Eight. So I'm going to go with Charleston in that. I do like the Creighton pick and all, but I rock with the 12 seed to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, I think that's a good pick with Charleston there over San Diego State, because I think Furman very well can beat Virginia. Virginia, I know, yeah, they're a 4 seed coming out of the ACC, but I think they're more of a coach style team that is what carries them rather than players. And I think Charleston And these teams, I think they can upset the system of Virginia rather than actually playing against a star-powered team. I think Charleston being 31-3, and as you mentioned, everybody in their lineup not averaging over 13, but not averaging under 10. You have 5 guys playing against a whole team. I think Charleston can go far. I like that pick.
Most definitely. Most definitely. I mean, that's the thing. The consistency in March. I mean, that's going to be a big thing. Consistency, 3-point making, not turning the ball over, playing defense. That's what gets you good places in March.
Absolutely. And I think we're just going to slide across the board here and go to the Midwest. Number 1 seed out of the Midwest, you have Houston, and then you also have Texas down there at the bottom. What do you like here about the Midwest? What do you dislike? Which one do you want to go with?
Well, we'll be positive. I'll go with a like. All right. I think we look at down the 7-10 game. I think Penn State's going to upset Texas A&M. I think Penn State's playing good basketball at the right time. I think they're scoring a decent amount. You look at both of those teams when it comes to scoring, pretty close overall. 72 points a game for Penn State, 73 for A&M. They're both, not bad defensive teams. Both have pretty good records against top 25 teams. I think Penn State's just getting hot at the right time. So I could definitely see Penn State getting a win in this one in that 7-10 matchup.
Absolutely. I think Penn State falls into that, this team's hot coming into March category. And I really like Penn State doing that. They made a run in the Big Ten tournament, and then they've been battle tested in the Big Ten. And I think A&M hit their ceiling. A&M had a good SEC tournament run, but I think they're just going to run out of steam hitting the first round here.
Mm-hmm. Yep, most
and
definitely
then
agree.
One team. Go ahead. My apologies.
No, you're good. I mean, I completely agree with that. I look at Penn State with the way that they're able to get through it. Look at March. You have when you look at March, you have some of these teams that are potentially underseeded. I'm not saying Penn State's underseeded. You look at a 7, 8, or 9 seed, or even a 10 seed that gets hot, and you're like, oh, we're going to pick them and go to the Final Four. I'm not saying Penn State's going to go to the Final Four, but I definitely think they have enough steam to get a victory over a 7 seed A&M.
Absolutely. I think they get to the round of 32 and then get bounced by a team like Texas, but they're definitely a team that can beat A&M for sure going into that one. And then I'm going to build off of you, already talking about Indiana. I think Indiana can make a deep run out of this Midwest bracket.
Man, I mean, I think Indiana's going to the Final Four. I mean, call me crazy if you want. I know they got freshman guards, very young guard play and all that. They got, bigs you can rely on. Trace Jackson Davis can do a little bit of everything. Not a fantastic 3-point shooter. Doesn't really do a whole lot of that. But I think just him being a matchup problem and almost a matchup nightmare for a lot of teams in this region. I think Indiana's going to go pretty far. Kent State, this is going to be a good game because Sincere Carey, they're the Kent State's best guard. He knows how to put the ball in the basket. So I think it's going to be a very entertaining game, but I think Indiana's going to come out on top. And I think, I think if they see a team like Houston, I think Indiana, if they're able to handle, the pressure that Houston's able to get, and, I don't know if Houston can really match up with Trace Jackson Davis. I don't think they can. So I think Indiana is going to go to the Final Four overall.
I agree. I really like Hood and Davis, that little 1-2 punch with IU. I think they can go on a deep run. And I think this game for Indiana, I think they're going to have the 2 toughest games in this bracket will be against Miami. I think Miami's going to beat Drake, and then when they match up against Houston. But really, I think Houston might get upset by Iowa. I don't know why I'm thinking that, why I'm saying that, but just something about Iowa. You've heard a lot of people say this Iowa team could be dangerous.
Yeah.
And what makes me think Iowa could do it is just simply off the fact that they can score the basketball, 80.2 points per game. It's just something, they have one of the worst losses of the year. I think it was against Eastern Illinois, if I remember right. They got manhandled. But just something, watching Houston play in the American Athletic Conference Championship the other day just makes me worry about them. I felt really confident about them coming in, especially from last year to this year, but now they lost Sasser. It makes me think they're very vulnerable and might get beat by an Iowa.
Yeah, they're a vulnerable team for sure. I think when you look at Iowa, a very alarming stat. I mean, they shoot nearly 40% from the 3 when they're at Carver Hawkeye Arena. They're not going to be at Carver Hawkeye Arena, but, scoring the basketball at 80 points a game, very impressive. Bruce Pearl teams are not necessarily great in the tournament. I know they made the Final Four run back in 2018-19, but I think this Iowa team is going to be very motivated. They lost to Ohio State a couple days ago. They're gonna be pissed off. I think, last year they were hot. They won the Big Ten at the 5 seed. They lose to Richmond in the round of 64. I think Iowa's gonna have a little bit of revenge on their mind, especially those McCaffrey boys.
Absolutely. I think Iowa's going to have that revenge on their mind. And I think what stands out makes me feel so confident in Iowa beating Houston in the second round. And also not even just beating Houston, but getting out of the first round too, because that's no understatement there. You got to get out of the first round.
Mm-hmm.
But Iowa's like one of the top 5 most efficient offenses, and they turn the ball over the least. And I think that's how Houston succeeds so much with their defense with that team, forcing turnovers and getting out and going. I think they want to say they're a top 10 turnover defense, but I'm not sure where they're at in there. But I think not turning the ball over, not shooting yourself in the foot is a key to getting these upsets. And I think that's how Iowa can move on. And I think it's how we see Indiana going to the Final Four potentially as well, as you mentioned.
Most definitely. I think you look at I'll say this. I'm really excited if Miami and Indiana play in that matchup. I think it's gonna be a great one. I think it'll come down to the wire, and all if those two teams do end up playing each other. I just think Indiana might do a couple things better down the stretch, and that's ultimately why I even have Indiana going to the Final Four. So I think it'll be a very close game. And I would love to see those two match up.
I absolutely think with Jackson Davis, averaging 21 and 11 roughly, all season long. You got to have someone to match that, and I don't think anyone out of this region can match that. You can maybe slow it down a bit, but Indiana has a good trio with, freshman of the year Hood as well.
Yep.
It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to slow down the Hoosiers. It's been a while since we've heard that being said come March, but it's definitely something that's going to be realistic and something that's going to be familiar for the coming years, I think.
Most definitely.
Let's skip down. You want to go east or west? What you thinking here?
Ooh, well, we go left or right. Let's go left or right this time. Let's go east.
All right, let's go east. We got Purdue, the 1 seed out here, and now at the bottom, Marquette. What are you thinking here? What's one team you like to come out of the east and one team maybe that's going to underperform?
Well, I'll give you this, all right? 5-12 matchup, Duke, Oral Roberts. I cannot wait for that game. Duke, Oral Roberts, there's 2 7-footers on Duke that are, playing fantastic right now. Kyle Filipowski has been sensational the last couple of weeks on Duke's 9-game winning streak. Derek Lively, he's an absolute, shot blocking machine for the Blue Devils. They're going to take on a good Oral Roberts team. Max Asmus, who's been there before. So I think this will be a very fun 5 versus 12 matchup. I think Duke is actually gonna get to the Elite 8. I think they'll get over a tough game against Oral Roberts. I think they'll beat Louisiana. I think Tennessee's vulnerable. I think they're not gonna really do a whole lot here. But I think Duke will get to the Sweet 16. I think that's when you'll see them play Purdue. I really like this region a lot though. So I'll kind of go down the board. Purdue, they'll get to the Sweet 16, but they'll lose to Duke. Memphis, FAU, that's going to be a fantastic game. Memphis just won the AAC, and FAU's 31-3. I have no clue who's going to win that game, but whoever does is going to give Purdue a pretty good game. Duke to the Elite 8. I think Duke's going to have a nice path there. Obviously, they're going to play Purdue, and I think that's where, having Derek Lively who can look Zach Edey eye to eye. I think the ability of trying to force him outside of outside of 7 or 8 feet makes it tough on Zach Edey. I think Derek Lively is going to give him a tough challenge, and I think that's where kind of isolate that. I think that's where Duke's guard play is going to take over, like Tyrese Proctor and Jeremy Roach. I think Tyrese Proctor is growing, and I think he's blossoming into a star player in front of our eyes. And Jeremy Roach has been there for a minute, and I think he knows the ins and outs of March. So I think that's where Duke comes into play. Kentucky, Providence. Honestly, that's kind of a toss-up. Kentucky's really, they haven't played well recently. Providence, partway decent. I haven't really watched those two teams a whole lot this season. Kansas State, Montana State. We might need to keep an eye on Montana State over Kansas State. Just saying. Kansas State is they're a very good team. They're in a tough conference, so I definitely got to keep that in mind. But that's just a weird portion of the bracket right there. And then the bottom 2 games, I'm going to the Michigan State USC game. I know you'll be there as well. And then Marquette, Vermont. I think Marquette's going to the Final Four. I think we both agreed on that. I think Marquette's going to play Duke in the Elite 8, and I think Marquette's going to just slip by Duke and get to the Final Four. So, I think this region's going to be very, very fun to watch.
Absolutely. Hopefully we have something coming to you guys there from Columbus when we're both there. I kind of we're both on the same page here with the East. I like Purdue to get out of the first round. I'm going to part ways with you here. I like Memphis. I really like Memphis. I think Memphis coming in, Kendrick Davis and who DeAndre Will, I believe
Yep.
is Williams or Will. I can't remember.
I can't even
In
remember
my
either.
in my notes, I'm looking at my chicken scratch over here, but the best scoring duo in the nation.
Yeah.
21.8 points per game from Davis and 17.9 from DeAndre. And I think Hardaway has his boys buzzing at the right time. I think I really like that Memphis squad. They played Houston tough and led from start to finish, essentially, that entire ball game. And I think Memphis is a team that's not scared of anyone. And I think they run Purdue to the wire, but I think Zach Edey does enough just to get over the hump. And then Oral Roberts and Duke, that's a matchup I really like. Oral Roberts, probably the best mid-major coming into this tournament, in my opinion. A 17-game win streak, longest in the nation right now, if I remember correctly. And then third in the nation in scoring and 25th in the country in field goal percentage. I like that. That's some very efficient numbers on the offensive side of things. But with Duke, they're 32nd in scoring defense. So someone's going to have to give here. And I don't know if it's going to be Oral Roberts' offense or Duke's defense. I don't know which one will give. But I think Oral Roberts and Max Abmas get knocked out of the first round, unfortunately. I wanted to see them go far. I mentioned that last night. But that's kind of my upset. Like, I was really hoping for Oral Roberts to get a good matchup at that 12 or a 13 seed. But I think Duke's just too much for him.
I think so too.
And then we work it down, Tennessee, Louisiana. I like Louisiana like you do. And then Kentucky, Providence is going to be a fun one to watch. Two teams I think that have really underperformed according to both their fan bases. Providence Friars, Kentucky Wildcats, they're two teams with rabid fan bases. I think rabid is a good word to say for describe them. And both those teams really underperformed this year, but both ended up in the tournament in March. And I think that's going to be Bryce Hopkins, versus Oscar Tshiebwe. Just former Kentucky player, transfers to Providence, taking on Player of the Year and Oscar. That's going to be a fun one to watch, but I think Kentucky gets past. And I like what you said about this Kansas State-Montana State game. Just gives me a weird feeling. I don't know who I'm going to pick. I've been leaning towards Kansas State, but that's not one that I'm like, hammer it, Kansas State's going through. It's just an awkward feeling there. And then Marquette, as you mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Tough. They are tough. They're a tough team right there. Marquette is a tough team. They obviously really beat up on Xavier in the Big East championship game. I think Marquette's got a nice road to Houston. So
absolutely. I think that's one that's going to happen, and I think it's going to be against a Duke team or I like it against Duke, or they're going to advance over an extremely banged up, battle-tested Purdue team. And I think Marquette will slip by either one of those teams. And if it's Purdue, they'll slip by because Purdue's just been banged up. Marquette's more fresh. Or if it's Duke, I just think Marquette's flat out better than Duke.
Most definitely.
And then we slide to the West. First reaction from the West. What are you thinking here?
Well, let's see. I think the upper half of things, I think Kansas is going to get to the Sweet 16. I think UConn's going to get there as well. I will say UConn versus Iona is an interesting matchup. Rick Pitino back in the dance, taking on UConn, but I think UConn's going to get some things right, and I think they're going to get to at least the Sweet 16. 5 versus 12, St. Mary's and VCU. If VCU is able to put pressure on St. Mary's offense and disrupt the flow in the system that the Gales have, VCU is going to move on. Didn't really get a chance to mention that matchup at all. I mean, we talked a lot of stuff and a lot of instant reactions. It just kind of got pushed to the side. I think VCU has a very good shot at beating St. Mary's, especially the way that VCU, is playing basketball overall. I mean, allowing 60 points a game. St. Mary's is allowing 60, but I really think VCU's got a good shot at doing that. If you look down at the bottom of the bracket, the two teams that I think are going to get to the Sweet 16 as well, I think it's going to be Gonzaga, UCLA. I think both of these teams have, pretty good roads to get to that point. I think whoever wins that game in the Sweet 16, I think it's going to be a classic. I think it's going to be an all-time classic Sweet 16 matchup. The last two times that I can remember these teams playing each other, in the tournament, it's been unbelievable. I mean, 2 years ago, Jalen Suggs hits the half-court shot to go to the national championship. Perfect season remained on go, until Monday night. And then, back in 2005, 2006, UCLA was down 17 against Gonzaga, and UCLA came back, beat Adam Morrison, Player of the Year for Gonzaga, and Both these teams have unbelievable wins against each other. I think they'll play each other in the Sweet 16, but I think UCLA is going to get the best of them. I think you could end up seeing UConn make it to the Elite Eight. I think the Big East is going to have a decent year when it comes to that in that regard. And I think I don't know. UConn, there's just I don't know. I mean, they have two fantastic big men. I'll tell you that. They have a great big man that's a starter. I forget what his name is. Oh my gosh, but besides that point, they have a great freshman big as well. So I think UConn's going to take on UCLA, and I think UCLA is going to get back to the Final Four.
I like what you said there. I like what you said there about UConn. It pains me to kind of say this from a while. I've been really feeling Bill Self, Grady Dick, and Kansas.
Yeah.
To kind of make it to the Final Four, if not repeat, for I want to say it'll be the third team to do it in 50 years or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't happen often, but I really like them to repeat. But I just don't like them out of the West. I mean, it's going to be tough for them to get out because I think UConn or Gonzaga are going to make it out and go to the Final Four from this region, I think.
Yeah, I mean, UConn just what they're able to pose on, from their big men and all that. I think it's just too much for Kansas. Kansas has great guard play. I think Jaden Wilson, Grady Dick, their point guard. I mean, he's fantastic. I blanked on his name, but he's a fantastic point guard, averaging like 7 assists a game. Doesn't turn the ball over a whole lot. I just think when it comes to that point in March, I think size will matter. So I think that's where UConn's going to really prevail in that portion.
Absolutely. I think UConn can make a dangerous run. In this UConn-Iona game, echo the sentiment you said, it'll be a very interesting game. But I think Rick Pitino already kind of has his foot out the door. I think he's going to take a bigger job this year. Yep. But he did resurrect his career at Iona nonetheless. And then I think Arkansas-Illinois is an interesting matchup at the 8-9 position. Because you have Anthony Black and Nick Smith, who are probably going to be lottery picks this year. Arkansas could run and could go if they figure it out, but I'm not sure if they figure it out over a Kansas team. But I think they can get it over Illinois, who's really stumbled of late. And then the team out of the Big Ten, the 7-seed Northwestern, not talked about a lot here, but I think they're a sleeper. They have 6 quad 1 victories on the season, the 13th best defense in the country, in the Big Ten Coach of the Year, and Chris Colling.
Yeah, I mean, every year it seems as though that, a team in between the 7 and 11 seed, one team makes it at least the Elite Eight or Final Four. And if you look at, if Northwestern was that team, obviously they got bounced by Penn State, in the quarterfinal of the Big Ten tournament. It's normally there's normally tends to be a team that's like, oh, they're not hot. You're not going to expect them to really do a whole lot. And they get hot right from the jump. And Northwestern could end up being that team. They could take down UCLA. They could play against a team like a Gonzaga. So I really like that pick for Northwestern.
Yeah, I don't know if they have enough juice to get past UCLA. But if they're a team, that's the team that beats UCLA. I think it's Gonzaga or Northwestern that beats UCLA coming out of here. And I think if UCLA can make a run, I think they'd make the run here. If it's UConn, UCLA, I like UCLA over UConn. But I just think one of these teams in Gonzaga or Northwestern are going to best UCLA coming out of the bottom half of this bracket down here. That's just what my instant reaction has been. Yep. And looking at it, I'd really like Northwestern, though they've grown on me a bit. I don't think they beat UCLA. I think they give UCLA a really good game. But just seeing that collective group come together this year, I think they can make some damage. In VCU, you mentioned we're going to run backwards to that one. St. Mary's, their conference tournament was extremely early. They haven't played in a long time. And I mean, you can vouch to it as a basketball player. That rest is nice, but it's very March Madness. You see teams get hot because they play a game, off day, they play right again. Yeah. And they're just constantly rolling. I think stepping away from the game, just practicing or resting this time could be devastating for St. Mary's.
I think so, especially a team like VCU that, they preach getting out and running and jumping on defense and using the defense to be their offense. I think that's a huge thing. So I think you could definitely see St. Mary's fall in that 5 versus 12 matchup. Definitely circle that.
Yeah, I think 2 very even teams in that 5-12. In VCU, I think it's just VCU comes out of the gate hot in that game and can get on top of St. Mary's. early, get up by 8 to 10 points early, and kind of catch St. Mary's sleeping, I think that puts the nail in the coffin. But if this is a tight game coming out, I think St. Mary's might get them. But I think VCU just jumps on the pedal from the start and just blows past them.
Couldn't agree more.
And then just wrapping it up here, I know we both got some busy schedules going on, and I'm not going to ask for your national champion and all that because we got some big-time brackets going together. But we kind of mentioned it a little bit. What would you say your Final Four is, or maybe Final Four or X, team two coming in, like your best 5 or 6 if you're not so confident about somebody?
Yeah, so I'll say that Alabama's going to make it out of the South. I think Marquette. I think that matchup, Alabama-Marquette's going to be a great Final Four matchup. I will say out of the West, I think that UCLA Northwestern is a good point right there. I think UCLA will make it out. But, man, I mean, I've been flirting back and forth between UCLA and Kansas. I don't think UConn's going to make it to the Final Four, but I think UConn's going to give whoever they play is going to give them absolute hell. But I think UCLA is going to make it out of there. And then I think Indiana's going to make it. I mean, it's a bit of a wild pick, but I think Trace Jackson Davis and them are going to go on ahead and do their job. So I'm going to go on ahead and say UCLA is going to play Indiana, and I think Alabama's going to play Marquette.
I feel you there. I kind of like those. I think – resounding yes for Alabama. Not sure who they get in the Sweet 16 Elite 8 going forward, but I think they get there nonetheless. And then coming out of the East, matching up with Alabama, I really like Marquette. I mean, I think me and you have both on the same page there. It's Marquette. It's Marquette 100% there. And I actually think Marquette beats Alabama in the Final Four if they match up. I really like Marquette as a team. And Shaka Smart is going to be a coach who just gets his guys energized. I don't know if you watched it, but he is down in stance while his team's on defense. And there's just something about having a coach like that who's just trying to resurrect his career. Made a great run with VCU, floundered a bit at Texas. And I think he had like a chip on his shoulder of just trying to get back and prove something. And I kind of like that, this Marquette team.
Most definitely. I think
Go ahead. Yeah.
Most definitely. I think Marquette. I think you saw Shaka Smart. I think, like I said, he playing with the chip, coaching with the chip on his shoulder. He's almost like he's playing. But
absolutely.
Yeah, I think the man grew some hair back. I think he's kind of in a good spot when it comes to that. But I think overall, he's a very motivated coach right now, and I think it's going to get them all the way to at least the Final Four.
I agree. Something about just having the motivated coach. Both of us can speak to it being kind of athletes being in a locker room. If you have a coach that's hungry and wants it, it just goes on to you, and then you want it just as much as he does, if not more, I think. And that's going to go quite a bit of ways. And coming out of the West, what I thought was going to be a simple pick, just choosing Kansas to go, keeping it kind of chalk. I think it's Gonzaga or UConn coming out of here. And I really like UConn. I'm going to lean UConn here, but I wouldn't be shocked if Gonzaga or UCLA make it out. And if I had to give you a team, I'm going to go off path a bit and say UConn makes it to the Final Four.
All right.
And then coming out of the Midwest, I'm going to have – this might be a hot take here. I think Houston might get beat in the round of 32. If they don't get beat in the round of 32, they get beat in the Sweet 16 by a team like Indiana. But I think Indiana will go here. So if we just map it out, I'm thinking we got this, and then we now have it in the Indiana-Iowa matchup, Sweet 16.
That would be unbelievable.
And I think Indiana gets Iowa. Just Trace Jackson Davis, just a guy who cannot be stopped, I think. And then coming out of this bottom half, I like Xavier. I really like Xavier here. I think Penn State, I think it's going to be something about this 5'11" here, right here. 6'11", excuse me. I think Pitt might beat Iowa State. But nonetheless, Xavier, I think, makes it to what is going to be here, the Elite Eight versus Indiana.
Ooh,
and something about Xavier. I know Xavier just got embarrassed in the Big East Championship game. But something here just about Xavier makes me think that they can get it and get to the Final Four. And Sean Miller coaching inspired, at Xavier. I think Xavier IU makes it to the Final Four out of the top right section of this bracket. What is that, the Midwest? Yeah, the Midwest, excuse me. I think Indiana or Xavier will go. And just to be different, because I know you, Pat, I'm going to go Xavier. Making it out of the Midwest. A little bit more of a bold take there. But I think both those teams will do very well and make the championship game. beating who we have coming out of the South, whether that is a UCLA or a Kansas, I think.
Yeah.
Hot take, but
I
something
like
about
it though.
this.
I like it. Won't
I
blame it
think
at
the
all.
Big East proves strong this year. I think the Big East proves strong this year. That's my thing. Big East proves strong. Big 12, Big 10 gets talked about all regular season long, but I think the Big East has a strong showing here in March.
I believe so. I mean, shoot, I would love to see the Big East get 3 out of 4 teams in the Final Four. It definitely could happen. It's March.
Yeah, Big East is going to have – it was just a fun tournament to watch, just the Big East tournament alone. But obviously March, there's so much going on, so much unpredictability, as we've mentioned. It's going to be a fun thing to watch, and we'll be coming back, whether it's on Chase's channel, Cut to the Chase Sports Podcast, or here, a bit of both, doing some coverage, breaking down instant reactions of first round, second round, 32, 16, Elite 8, and so forth. We'll be giving you some good, unique takes, using Chase's phrase there, unique insight on sports. But where you got some final comments here, Chase? Anything you want to send everybody away from with?
Man, just really with you, man. Thanks for having me on. This is a pleasure to be on your show.
Oh, not a problem, man. It's always great having you on. You've been on the radio side of things, haven't been on the YouTube side of the thing in a minute. And It was good to be on your show last night as well.
Most definitely, man. It's going to be fun to cover the entire month of March and just seeing what's going on forward.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. Thank you again for tuning in. It's Chase Youts, host of Cut to the Chase Sports Podcast. Got some great content over there. Going to be covering NFL free agency, March Madness, and all that. And do the same here. We'll be teaming up here and there in between. But Chase, once again, man, always a pleasure having you. And it's March, man. Let it be crazy.
Let's do it. Yes, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Once again, Chase Youts and Tyler Smith. Cut to the Chase Sports Podcast. Excuse me.
All
good. It's a mouthful there. A lot of alliteration going on, and keeping it real with Tyler Smith. It's been a pleasure. Take care, everybody.
Yes, sir.
And